the Bronc Bros podcast with Adam Ramirez and Sean Flanagan.
Well, that was fancy, Sean.
Yeah, new intro.
That was awesome. Big tip of the cap to our fearless leader, Steven. He has been working behind the scenes to fix all this stuff, and he has helped me with the new branding, Bronc Bros. So welcome, everyone, to the Bronc Bros podcast. Or should I call it the Jarrett Stidham Show, Sean? I'm not really sure what we should... if we should be renaming the stadium and, giving him key to the city by now. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what's taking so long after 2 preseason games.
Crazy, right? I mean, he is throwing dimes against guys who will be doing podcasts like us in a couple of weeks. So I'm not sure I'm buying the hype. But Sean, have you been hearing, whether it's locally or outside, that there's concerns about Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham could possibly be QB1? Because I've heard some stuff, and I'm laughing a lot. Let's just say that.
I mean, you always get the stuff from Nick wrong, but, and people like that. But the good thing is, I guess, if you're hyping him, maybe there's an opportunity. I know he said if he doesn't have an opportunity to start, he doesn't want to go anywhere and he'd prefer to stay here. But it's obvious that teams like the Saints don't have a starter, or teams like the Colts. I can't imagine that they think Daniel Jones is the long-term answer there. So, I think part of it is probably, hey, hype this dude up and maybe we can get something for him kind of thing from a local standpoint. From the outside standpoint, I think it's just haters that just aren't willing to buy into last year and Bo and those types of things. And they're about to be proven wrong. So, it is what it is on that front.
The thing that's driving me insane, Sean, about the Bo Nix stuff is everybody's making this evaluation off of a preseason game, like a quarter of a preseason game. So we're just out on Bo Nix after a quarter of a preseason game. That's insanity.
Yeah.
But it speaks to what we talked about on the last podcast, Sean, which was people are just impatient. They don't want to see things through. They won't allow a young quarterback to go up and down until he gets to where he's supposed to be, which unfortunately is the reality when you're dealing with a young quarterback, right? I don't like that people are putting him on this pedestal that he can't possibly live up to this year unless he wins a Super Bowl, Sean. So what are your thoughts on that? Are you concerned with Broncos fans, kind of putting him up there and then just throwing him under the bus after struggling in a preseason game where, by the way, the offensive line wasn't very good, right?
I mean, if anyone within that building was concerned, he would have played in the last game. If there were any concerns of mechanics, he's not reading the field well, anything that they thought he would need to tune up prior to the season, he would have played in the last game, just like Jaden Daniels did. Obviously there's a different train of thought there, but he could have got hurt. You know what I mean? There were some times in that game where he very well could have gotten hurt. And same with Joe Burrow, who was running for his life already in the preseason. So, I don't believe that the team is concerned, and that is in line with how I feel. Absolutely not concerned. And obviously he's the better quarterback than Jarrett Stidham, and the plays that Jarrett Stidham's been making, which ultimately will be Bo Nix's offense, look exactly how we want to see them. The receivers are where they're supposed to be. They're, Franklin's having a great preseason. Bryant's having a great preseason. So sure, it's just Stidham throwing the ball. It's the nature of the preseason. Anybody that thinks differently is out of their mind. And they're drinking 2 years ago Kool-Aid still, and they can't stop drinking it, and they need to let it go.
Well put. And look, we're not hating on Jarrett Stidham, guys. We are simply saying that Bo Nix is the franchise quarterback. This has been established. So if you're not on board with Bo Nix by now, I think it's still okay. But to say that he's, going to be replaced by Jarrett Stidham this year in any scenario other than an injury it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And there's things to be said about having a really good backup quarterback, and I feel like the Broncos have a really good backup quarterback.
Okay.
And you're talking about him being in his third year now in the Sean Payton offense. So we like to see the progression of Jarrett Stidham getting better and better. But I saw somebody suggest that we should trade him for like a mid-round draft pick. And while that sounds good on paper, getting a mid-round draft pick, we would be without our solid backup quarterback, right? And some people would say, well, you pay Jarrett Stidham a little too much. And some people might agree with that. Some people might not. But you got to pay a guy to be able to be there so your season doesn't just crumble if Bo Nix gets hurt, right? So on that note, Sean, we're keeping Jarrett Stidham, by the way. So nobody needs to – we don't need to talk about that. On that note, Sean, how do you feel with Jarrett Stidham in his third year in the offense? If he had to step in for a game or for an extended period of time, would it kill the Broncos' playoff chances, or would they be okay?
I mean, it depends on the game, of course, right? Depends who that matchup is and things like that. Was it a game you were going to win on paper, and does he ultimately change a lot of that? So, I think he can win a game. Absolutely. I think I completely agree with you that he's probably one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL, hence why there's value there. Right. And I know some of the talk is because Sam Ehlinger has had a relatively good camp. I don't think that we're talking the same as Jarrett Stidham, at least within the offense at this point in time. So if your ultimate goal is to go to the Super Bowl, which Bo Nix speaks of and Sean Payton speaks of, there's a real chance, especially now with 17 games, that Jarrett Stidham may have to play a game or two. And I do believe, as far as the whole landscape of backup quarterbacks across the NFL, he gives us a shot. And I think this running back room assists with that and can kind of bring that along as well. But he's clearly making the throws, right? So, I think he's going to function well in the offense if needed.
Absolutely. And if Sean Payton allows it, Sean, the strength of the offense should be the running game, in my opinion. It's a loaded running back room. You are going to have a four-headed monster, right? Maybe five, probably four. But you're going to allow yourself to control the game, keep your quarterback safe, keep him in rhythm, allow him to do what he does and get out of the pocket, right? That's where he's good. He's good in the pocket too, but you guys know what I'm saying. So if Jarrett Stidham did have to step in, I would hope that the Broncos' run game has already been established, and it is the strength of the offense. I know the wide receiver room's looking really good at this point. I still don't think we have a number one receiver. I think that Troy Franklin shows flashes of being a number one. But I think the Broncos have a bunch of number two receivers, which is fine, right? Because they're very good. And Pat Bryant has played good enough that we traded Devon Bailey. So that's our next topic, Sean, is the trade of Devon Bailey, and it has the room divided, I would say. How is this room, Sean?
I don't agree with it. Outside of the compensation, and when you just look at it from strictly a business transaction, it makes a ton of sense, right? You used a 7th round pick to draft Bailey. You got a 4th and a 7th back. Absolute home run from a compensation perspective if either of those picks pan out. And I do think that Vele is going to pan out. So that's like, the age-old thing is, do you trade a proven commodity for an unknown? And I think Vele was going to be a very effective receiver in this offense. I think he showed that last year. I think to be as good as he was in his rookie year, I know he's older when it comes to rookies and younger players. So, I get that argument. I've seen that floating around and stuff too. So obviously Pat Bryant is a younger version of him. Pat Bryant is a fantastic blocker, which is obviously something that's getting him on the field sooner, I think, and probably ultimately allowed this to happen. But I would have liked to see him a second year, see where he grows, see if it was going to be a an intricate part of this offense because I think he was. So I'm a little bit bummed. When I saw it on my phone, it was not the happiest update that I got for sure. So I'm a little disappointed, but when you have depth at positions, other teams are going to want it. And I don't personally think that that's going to be the last trade this week.
Yes, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. On the third down situation, though, I remember Vele being a pretty reliable target on third down a lot last year, right? And we've heard a lot about Pat Bryant's route running ability and his blocking. But besides Cortland Sutton, wouldn't you think, and Evan Ingram, that Pat Bryant's going to have to step into that role and be a reliable third down receiver as well? And
he's that size receiver, right? I mean, that's not Franklin. That's not what Franklin's there to do.
Correct. And he's not the fastest receiver either. So that you think of him as a possession receiver, right? But the question becomes, Sean, will Coach Payton get him on the field and get him reps, get him the ball? Because I know they like his blocking and things like that, but they typically slow play the rookies, right? It takes a lot for you to get on the field. And so that's my concern with trading Vele is like, okay, if you trade Vele, that's one thing. But if you trade Vele and then Pat Bryant's not a third down target, are we supplementing that with Evan Ingram? Or are we just now missing our third down reliable target?
Yeah, I mean, I think then you just rely on Sutton, maybe even more so than you did before. But I mean, Sean Payton's not Mike Malone. He's not going to outright refuse to play rookies, unless you're Estime and you put the ball on the turf. But I think you've put yourself in a position that you have no choice. He's gonna have to play. Sherfield's not a huge guy. He seems sure-handed enough, but I don't think he's what you're referring to is that third down presence. So welcome to the NFL, Pat Bryant. You're going to have reps, and you're going to have reps in important situations, and you got to pull through.
Well, and I'm not sliding Cortland Sutton in any way. I don't want anybody to think that. I know that he's a third down target, but you better believe that the other team is going to try and take him away on third down, right? So the Broncos are going to have to find other ways to get somebody the ball on third down. Evan Ingram is going to be a good safety valve as well. But we know, just as football fans and general football knowledge, the easiest thing to take away in an NFL game, in a football game, is the wide receiver, right? A key wide receiver. We've heard defensive coordinators talk about this before. That's why tight ends eat so much right now, and running backs are hard to match up with, when they're out as a receiver. So I'm interested to figure out how the Broncos are going to do this without Vele. I think you're correct. It's a great trade on paper. The Broncos got extremely good value back in return for, what wasn't he, a 7th round draft pick?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the Saints were thinking there, but maybe Vele becomes a wide receiver 2 out there with Olave, who I hope stays healthy this year. My goodness.
Yeah.
So we wish the best to Devon Vele. I personally am going to miss him too. I think I would have liked to seen him in his second year in the Sean Payton offense, but I think he'll be good to go there with the Saints, and he'll get an opportunity to be, play a bigger role than he was going to play here.
Yep.
So I think that's a good thing. So Sean, we've got trades. Trades are happening across the league, right? What are we thinking as far as more trades from the Broncos that you alluded to earlier? Who's going next?
A running back for sure. I think it's a room and a position of depth for us. And there are a lot of teams that are just getting decimated by injuries in the running back room. Teams like San Francisco, who we have a good relationship with. And I think, unfortunately, I feel like, you and I spoke before. I think Sean Payton's obsession with Jaleel McLaughlin and the low value of Audric Estime make it Bidet or Watson, which I would prefer to keep. But I do think from a value perspective, I just think that that's probably who would go if it's going to be a trade. Because I know we spoke last week, and, my thought is, Estime is not going to make this team. And the only way that he does is if someone gets hurt or someone gets traded. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be one of those two guys. I don't think Watson or Bidet would sneak to the practice squad this year. I think they've done enough in camp and on film that they're just not going to get through. Not with how many teams need running backs and how many running backs are needed. I just don't see it. So I think it's going to be one of those two guys if I had to, put a prediction on it.
I've got to tell you, and I think whoever watched this last year would probably be able to recall back to when I was saying these things. I'm not a big fan of Jaleel McLaughlin. I understand that he can be a nice threat out of the backfield on third down in the passing game. But we have that now with Harvey, right? We don't need two of those. And I think Dobbins can somewhat be a threat there too. I don't like the idea of getting rid of Blake Watson at all, or Bidet. I think every time I watch Blake Watson run, I'm like, dude, this guy has terrific field vision. And he's able to cut back, not as good as like Terrell Davis, but I see a little like Arian Foster in him a little bit, I think, when it comes to the way he's able to see the field. And that's just an off-the-cuff comparison. But I really think Blake Watson is just getting overlooked on this roster. And if you put him on a team like San Francisco, I think he becomes a star. I really do. Because we've seen that they have, the ability to just throw running backs in there and have a lot of success, right? Even when Christian McCaffrey is not available, I think we've seen them have a history of being able to just plug in a running back, kind of like the Broncos in the 90s, where it was just Mike Anderson or Olandis Gary or Quentin Griffin, whoever it was, they just had success there. And I think they have a system there in San Francisco that would allow him to flourish. But if we're talking about a trade, we don't think Estime has any trade value. And that's not a slight on Estime. It's just kind of speaking matter of factly, right? It doesn't seem like you could get much for him, right? I think if he ended up getting cut, he may not even, I don't know, might end up on a practice squad maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't think there's enough tape on him for people to be like, oh, we got to get him, But when it comes to McLaughlin, I think that he's a nice trade piece. And if you can get a fourth for Bailey, you could at least get a fourth for Jaleel McLaughlin, who is a somewhat more proven commodity than Bailey is, right? But the Broncos are in a good position, Sean, where the running back room is deep. It is deep. There's a lot of deep areas on this team. So that brings me to my next question, Sean, and that's who's your player on the bubble who you would not want to see the Broncos either trade or cut?
Obviously we already spoke about those two. So that's kind of, I'll leave those alone because that's kind of where I would want those two to stay.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge and the difficulty is going to be on defense just because you just have an embarrassment of riches there too.
Yep.
So, I would hope that one of those guys that you're going to potentially cut is going to be, a piece that can be traded if we ultimately have to just let somebody go. But I really want to see Chris Abrams-Drain stay on this team. And obviously these guys keep getting injured and stuff in years past, and they're just not getting the snaps that they probably ultimately could have or should have. So, he's one that, I know we had spoke about it before too, but every time I see him play, I'm like, this dude can actually play. But how can you play on this team? There's so many dudes on the defense. It's so hard, but I really hope he makes the roster. I think he deserves it. And I would like that depth with him to remain on team for sure.
I think that guy could start on another team, to your point. Yeah. So the Broncos would be wise to hold on to him. And I don't think he's really on the bubble, but the Broncos, like we talked about before the show, Sean, they've been known to make some decisions where it's like, this guy's going to make the team, and then he's cut or he's traded or something. I know the Broncos are extremely deep at cornerback. At least we think that. And Chris Abrams-Drain is a huge part of that. And I kind of see him in the ilk of Blake Watson. It's like he's a very talented player, and then we drafted somebody else this year to kind of play that spot over him, but he's got talent and he can play. And so I would really like the Broncos to keep him, but Blake Watson is the guy for me. And if it's not Blake Watson, it's Bidet. So I don't understand the obsession with Jaleel McLaughlin. I just don't like. There's no value there running the ball, in my opinion. Like, am I wrong?
No, but I think, I think to your point where he has more experience and more film and he's done more things in the NFL, I don't think the running back position carries that kind of value. Like,
no, you're right.
And he's small. So,
yeah.
Like he's going to be, we might get a 6th or 7th for somebody like him because I think he plays a very limited role and he's not going to be anybody's feature back.
That's a good point.
Whereas, maybe Bidet or Watson could be. And to your point, it's like, yeah, it's Kyle. I mean, we had Mike, they have Kyle. Me or you could rush for 1,000 yards back there in those systems. It's crazy. You put out these dudes from small colleges and undrafted dudes and things like that. It's just kind of the way it is. So I know you don't want to hear it. I know that's your guy. I just feel like they're crippled there again. I mean, it's year after year. They just can't stay healthy there. They're picking up dudes off the street and they're literally playing 2 days later in the game. I think Jeff Wilson was picked up like Friday or something and he played on Sunday because they had nobody. So, I just, that's the one that sticks in my head. I just feel like it's going to go there, or to your point, a corner somewhere is probably going to get traded because they're just not going to play unless somebody gets hurt, unless they are major contributors on special teams, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I just have not followed special teams enough to know which, 11 guys are going to play there. But man, I think it's going to be Watson or Bidet that are getting traded, man. I just really feel that way. I feel like that's just a position of need in the NFL, and those guys are doing enough. And I think they're going to prove even more so this weekend.
So to that point, then, let's say it is between those two, right? And Estime just straight up gets cut, right? Who are you keeping between Bidet and Watson? Am I just like seeing something that nobody else sees with Watson, or because every time he's on the field, he is just awesome.
No, he breaks plays every time. It feels like, I know they're usually in relatively meaningless games, but if they get traded, Estime is going to be on this team. He's going to be the last running back most likely if they deal one. Otherwise, he gets cut. I mean, I know you think I think we're going to take 5. I know you think 4. I know we kind of talked about that, but I feel like just because of the strength of the room and the way people get injured. I mean, JK has been injured his whole career.
Good point.
You hope that he's going to make it, and he has RJ Harvey to kind of take some of those snaps away. But I feel like when you have those guys, you're not just going to let them walk. So I feel like we'll roster 5. So if we trade one, Estime is on this roster, maybe for original cuts. And if somebody else gets released, then he gets cut and we pick them up. You know how that works. But gosh, man, I don't know who it would be. I think Bidet would probably be the more likely choice because I don't know. I don't, honestly, it's a toss up. I don't think I could make a good argument. I think I would be losing the argument if I tried to make one for one or the other. I just feel like it's going to be one of those guys.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Am I doing my math wrong? We've got Dobbins, Harvey. Those are the top 2, right? And then the other options are McLaughlin, Bidet, Watson, and Estime. So if you cut Estime, that leaves 3 guys still. So McLaughlin, Bidet, and Watson, 2 of those guys are going to make the team for sure. They could still just cut Estime.
Yeah. But like I said, I think they're going to roster 5. So, and I think the only way Estime makes this team is if we trade one of them. Otherwise, you could just straight up cut one and keep those 5 if you wanted to, which I think would probably be better for us. But I just feel like there's going to be value in those guys, and I think that they're going to get moved.
Is there a scenario in your head where Estime lands on the practice squad?
I think he played well enough in Notre Dame that somebody would take him or put him on their practice squad, and I think he'd probably opt for that over us, just knowing the running back depth and the fact that Sean Payton wasn't playing him. So if he had, our practice squad or San Francisco's practice squad, I think he'd walk. I think that's a better option for him, and I wouldn't blame him one bit. And I don't dislike Audric. I think I
don't either.
I think he could play a role on this team, but when you have all these guys, he's just not as good as the other ones.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And that's what preseason is, guys. It's a numbers game.
Yep.
And guys and gals, just so we're clear. Thank you to all the ladies that tune into the podcast as well. But Sean, I just think that we would be making a monumental mistake by keeping McLaughlin and cutting Watson or Bidet. I'm not a fan of that idea. If you want to roster the five of them and Blake Watson's the last one, cool. If you put Blake Watson on the practice squad, he's not gonna stay. Are they protected on the practice squad? My mind is mush right now. They are not, right?
No.
So if you put Blake Watson on the practice squad, he's gone.
If somebody offers him a NFL roster spot, then he can go.
He would be offered an NFL roster spot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so would Bidet. You're telling me the New York Giants or who else needs running backs out there? The Carolina Panthers. You're telling me those teams wouldn't at least entertain the thought of offering an NFL spot to one of these two guys?
And people get hurt every year, so it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I think they should carry 5. I don't think they will. That's my thing on that. I am pounding the table, Sean Payton, for Blake Watson. I thought he was a sneaky good free agent signing by the Broncos last year, and I think he's just overlooked. I don't know what it is, but I think he's extremely talented. I love his field vision, and like you said, he just makes plays every time he's out there. And I'm not misspeaking on that. It was an undrafted free agent situation, right?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we used a pick on him, but I do not recall.
Let's take a look real quick, Sean, before we get out of here.
But I think even in that last game, I think it got called back to penalty, but he broke a pretty sizable run.
Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent. Don't question me again, Bronc Bros.
That's our favorite, man. UDFAs. That's how we get down.
Especially at running back.
Yeah,
running back and cornerback. Because wasn't Chris Harris Jr. was undrafted, right? Mm-hmm. Out of Kansas. Man, we've found some good players over the years, and I think Brandon Marshall wasn't undrafted, right? Or what he wasn't he? Or he was drafted by the Jaguars. I thought he was an undrafted free agent from the Jaguars.
Linebacker Marshall, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, no, he was a 5th round pick. My bad. Now you guys can question me again because I don't know what I'm talking about. So, Sean, before we get out of here, 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks to the day, but a little bit longer, 2 weeks and 3 days. 2 weeks and 3 days away from Denver Broncos playing some football at Mile High against the Titans. Are we feeling good about the team either way?
That's a win.
Well, I mean, a rookie quarterback going against this defense. Yeah. It's not going to be.
It's going to be a nightmare for him. It's going to be It's going to be a welcome to the NFL moment for sure.
Well, and they don't have the receivers to give Denver problems, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but we're getting closer, Sean. We're getting closer for football season. We will be with you guys on Sundays after the games. That's the only day I have available. I don't know about you, Sean. We can maybe we'll do, I think we might do like a pregame, like a preview of the next game and the post game, maybe all in one or something like that. Because we just don't have a lot of time right now. But the more that you guys watch the podcast, right, Sean, then the quicker we can quit our jobs.
Yeah. Hey, man, you should sign me up.
I really do love my job. I work for a great company, but it would be nice to grow this page more and get a lot more listeners. We know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. We're very patient and we're very appreciative of those of you, men and women, who watch the Bronc Bros. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this podcast episode of the not the Jarrett Stidham Show, the Bronc Bros podcast. It's just silly, isn't it? It's just silly.
Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in. We love you guys. We love the Broncos. Until next time, go Broncos.
See you soon.